Welcome to the Straight Talk on Fleet podcast with Aaron Gilchrist. Each week, Aaron will be breaking down fleet management, trying to cut through the noise and get down to the real issues safety and operations leaders are struggling with every day. The goal will be to get to the bottom of how leaders can break down these silos of information, accelerate change management, how to use real-time, accurate data to drive massive efficiencies across fleet-focused business processes, and to elevate people's careers with emerging best practices. Now it's time for the Straight Talk on Fleet.
Fleet community, I am so excited for today for so many reasons. So welcome to episode 62, it's unbelievable, of Straight Talk on Fleet podcast. I'm Aaron Gilchrist-Rugg. I am the VP of Fleet Evangelism at IntelliShift. So that's just a fun title that I get to have. And it just means, hey, I'm a longtime fleet manager with a passion for safety and efficiency and sustainability for sure. And what we aim to do on our podcast is just bring my experience and that of my guests together to kind of generate conversation and community out there in fleet. So our goals, and we hope we do this today, is to really help fleet safety and ops leaders learn and elevate their careers. So it is Women's History Month, and we are celebrating with this rock star panel of women in fleet today, and I couldn't be more excited if you can't tell. So welcome, ladies. Let's just start with some introductions. So let's start with you, Laura, and just, short intros, and then we'll dig into this awesome podcast.
All right. Well, thank you, Aaron, for involving me in yet another podcast. It's always fun to do, and especially with such a great group of women. I'm excited for the conversation and to listen and learn and take away new tidbits. But I'm Laura Joswiak. I'm the Chief Client Officer at Wheels. I've been at Wheels for 22 years. I've been in the industry for over 30 years, and looking forward to seeing how we can continue to contribute.
Excellent. Yay. 30 years is a long time. I've been in the industry for 21. So I feel you. There's so much that's happened since we got started, and we'll talk about that a little bit today. Sherry, you're up.
Yeah, hi. I echo what Laura said. So excited to be here, and thank you for including me. And Aaron, love your podcast. I learn something every time I hear one of them. So hopefully be able to contribute to that today as well. So my name's Sherry Calkins. I'm Senior Vice President of Global Strategic Accounts at Geotab. I've been in the fleet industry for 27 years. I'm catching you, Laura. I'm almost there. It feels like sometimes longer. Sometimes it feels like I haven't been here that long at all. But I've been, Geotab for 10 years, in the fleet industry for 27 and growing. So my role has evolved over time. I started as a fleet administrator, which was, my learning years, and have evolved into the technology side. So to your point, Aaron, forever evolving, forever changing, and just so fortunate to be a part of it.
Excellent. Michaela, you're up.
Also really excited to be here. I'm Michaela Baldwin. I'm the fleet manager with QuilSys. I've been in the fleet surrounding space for about 14 years, but 9.5 of that's been with QuilSys.
Excellent. And I love that all of us have extremely different kind of stories, and we'll kind of start there. But let's talk about how we got into the industry. I know a lot of times we hear, hey, who grew up and said, I want to be a fleet manager, or I want to be in fleet. We didn't even know what that was. And a lot of us sort of fell into it. So, I'd like to talk about some things like, first jobs and, early challenges and things like that, and what sparked your interest in fleet. So, Sherry, we're going to start with you here. Give us a little background.
Yeah. So yes, didn't even know what fleet was, right, when I applied for my first fleet management role. And I was working at a dealership. So I think for some reason that gave them a false sense that I knew what I was doing. But my first job in fleet was actually at Penn State University. And I lived in State College. I grew up there, and, everybody wanted to work at the university. It was a great place to work, great benefits. So that was my goal, just work at Penn State. Lo and behold, it brought me into this incredible industry that I have fostered and loved, and I feel it has loved me back over these 27 years. Fell into it like I think all of us did. But, I think I had some challenges. This first role that I had, I'm 27 years old. I am a manager. I'm an operations manager. I had a team of 30. They were seasoned fleet folks, right? They were drivers, they were mechanics, they were fuel attendants. They understood the industry. They were older than me. So coming in a little naive, I think, I had been a coach. I knew how to coach people, and I came in that coaching, kind of hat on, and quickly learned that, I needed to learn from them first and foremost, and walk in their shoes and really understand what fleet was about and get those learnings before I could ever, try to help them in their role. And I carried that with me through my career. And, that first opportunity that I had in fleet, I had a great mentor too. Bruce Jonkin was my first fleet manager. And I think some of the best advice I got at the time was, get involved in the industry. He really encouraged me to get involved in NAFA at the time. We were a government fleet, and it was very much focused in NAFA. And that really helped me, right? It helped me network. It helped me get with people who were like-minded, that had walked in my shoes as well, and could help me do better in my role and bring that back into the fleet operations that we had. So I had to earn the trust. I had to earn the respect, but had a great network of people to help me get there. So, challenging, of course, to start in the industry when you really don't know a lot. But the one thing I've learned, and again, carry that through as well, is that everyone in this industry is so sharing and so giving, of their time. And when I left Penn State and I, went to another university, then I got into the global fleet side of it at Wendy's International. The person that I networked the most with was at McDonald's. How crazy is that? I have Wendy's restaurants networking with McDonald's, right, on fleet best practices and safety. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think that's the one thing we all love about this industry.
Yeah, that is so true. And I want to hit Michaela up here because, Michaela, you've been in the industry quite some time now. And when we were kind of talking and prepping up for this podcast, you shared the fact that, you didn't know that this whole kind of networking and collaboration existed. So tell us a little bit about how you got started.
So my first job really in like the fleet transportation logistics space was at a third-party logistics company. It was a temp to hire position, and I worked there for about 2 years and did all sorts of wild, crazy routing of fleet of stuff, and everything from pharmaceuticals to big, heavy haul equipment that needed special permits and could only travel like 2 days a week. So it took weeks to get there. And from there, I actually moved on to working at a trucking company doing brokerage and dispatch. And wildly enough, I ended up at ABC Refrigeration, which is the company I was with when it was acquired by Coolsys. I worked in the billing department for a few months. And when I found out the fleet manager was leaving, I emailed my boss every single day and asked him if I could have that job. I knew a background of trucking and DOT regulations, so I'm like, yeah, I could totally do this. But I'll be honest, the challenges started pretty much right out of the gate, because my third day in that position, we got notified we were having a DOT audit.
Oh,
so trial by fire. I learned so much in those first few weeks in that position, and it's just kind of how I've approached things ever since, because I'm always learning and adapting and growing. And years later, here I am navigating this ever evolving fleet space. But to your point, Erin, I was really alone in that for a long time, because I didn't know that there were these amazing networks of people. I thought, oh, fleet, such a niche thing that like only like 1 or 2 people do this. And then I found this huge network of people, and I'm like, oh, this has reinvigorated why I like doing what I'm doing.
I love that story. We're so happy you're here. You're a breath of fresh air in this industry. And we're so happy that you found this network. And I love Laura's story too. We've talked before about you kind of how you got into fleet. I want you to share your story. And Laura, what's so neat about what you do now is you get to serve the people like us who run fleets and who have all these challenges that we talk about. You get to assist in making lives easier every day. So tell us your story. I love your story.
It's why I love what I do. But I have to say, Michaela, the other thing that I mean that it can't get any worse, right? Like you started with a DOT audit. Like the rest of it, it's like, oh, I got this. This is easy. And it shows you to be ready for absolutely anything. So actually, what a blessing that's the way you started. You can never be afraid of an audit again, right? You've been through it, you know what to do. So I love that. So my story many moons ago is I just needed a job, and I applied at MK was the first place I worked. 10 years I was at MK, a little shy of 10 years, and they had and I didn't know what MK was. I didn't know what a fleet management company was, but they had an admin role open, an executive administrative assistant for the head of the VP of sales. I'm like, I can type, I'm organized, I can do this job, and I needed a job. So I applied and I got the job. And it's hard to go back in my memory. I'm pretty sure it was maybe 6 months. It could have been a year, but it was on short order. They asked if I would stay after work one day. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? They let me know that their head of license and title quit that day, and the department of it was small back then, of course. It was like, the 3 people left with her. And I was like, wow, what are you going to do? That's terrible. And they said, we think that you can do it. Would you take over the department? I'm like, super nice. Thank you. I have a driver's license. That is like the closest thing that I can get to in thinking I know what to do with license and title. And they said, you got this. We think that you can do it, which I'm going to go back and talk about in a little bit, how important that is. And so, of course, I did it. And so when you ask me then what was the challenges of those early times, that would be a pretty big challenge. I was walking in a department that left suddenly, and there was nobody there for me to ask. And then I had to go just like desk to desk and do forensic license and titling to understand what was there, what was open, and then be able to figure out what do we need. And super proud of what we created, because it was kind of their first quick tag, we called it. I don't know what they call it today, but to figure out like how do we do this in a more sophisticated manner, and that's what we did. And what was great was that I had nobody there to tell me how it was done, and so I could create just what was needed by talking to the rest of the departments, by talking to the clients, and just figuring out what could be, instead of you could go into a role and everyone tells you what it has to be, and that doesn't get you to where your future needs to be. And so, although it was challenging, I've taken that with me. Sherry, to your point, I've taken that, and everything that I've done is always learn, but then figure out what the future should look like.
I love that. And I love the fact that someone said, we believe in you, you can do this. And that's so important in our day to day, as whether we're just professionals, we're women in fleet, we're women in business. We could be moms and sisters and daughters and friends in all the aspects of our life. It's important to have that encouragement, to someone to say, you got this, you can do this, I believe in you. And we're going to touch on that here in a little bit. And I look at each of you as just these, again, rock stars, powerhouse women in fleet, and just powerhouse women that I admire and look up to. And on that note, since it is Women's History Month, I'd love to hear your perspectives on, a woman in history that you admire most, and sort of why. And I'll kick us off here. Harriet Tubman is someone who I've admired my entire life. I think mostly just for her faith and her courage, her resolution, and just this unrelenting pursuit of freedom for herself, but for so many others, and just putting her life at risk consistently for others, and her strength that was just unmatched. She never, ever quit. And what's so interesting about her, and it being Women's History Month, is she was born and died in March. So what a fitting month to celebrate her and to celebrate women like her. So she's someone, there's so many more, but she's just one that I loved the movie that came out about her. It was just fantastic. If you haven't seen it, listeners, ladies, it's a great one. Okay. So Michaela, tell us a woman in history that you admire.
I have someone a little unconventional, that might be surprising for everybody, but Hedy Lamarr.
Hmm.
You might know that name because she was this glamorous actress in the golden age of Hollywood, but did you know she also is responsible for the technology that we use every day in Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and even GPS systems?
Hmm.
She co-invented that technology that was originally meant for secure military communications. And, thanks to her work, now we use these things every day. And I just think that she's always been admired for her beauty and her fame, but her intellect and determination just prove that innovation can come from these unexpected places. And I think she's a role model for anyone who thinks that they have to fit into a certain mold to make an impact. And her brilliance just shows that there's no boundaries to what you can achieve, even if somebody thinks you don't fit that mold.
Love that. That's great messaging for everyone listening, especially for women in business. Laura, you're up.
So I would say Marjorie Merriweather Post. And if you haven't read the book, The Magnificent Lives of Marjorie Merriweather Post, I didn't know anything about it other than everybody was saying to read it. And I'm so glad I did. She was amazing. So she was the daughter of Post, Mr. Post. I don't remember his first name, but who invented Post cereal. And the whole story of the family really having nothing, and the father almost dying, and them trying to rehabilitate him eating this type of cereal, and it was grape nuts, what it turned out to be, and how they made their fortune with there. But what I like more about it is that she was taught to be driven by her father and knew not any other way, but also taught, survival. This is what you did to survive. And she wasn't afraid of what the stereotypes may be. And in fact, when her father passed and she owned Post cereal. Think about this. She was the owner of Post cereal, and she was not allowed to serve on the corporate board because women in that day were not allowed to serve on a corporate board. She owns the company.
Isn't that crazy?
Unbelievable.
Until one day, she kind of was like, stop me.
Yeah.
And she walked in and said, I'm going to be on the board. So she was the first woman to serve on a corporate board, only because she had the courage to break that glass of her own company and of the own stereotypes of that day. It was very brave. It was very brave. But the story of just her trying new things against advice, buying bird's eye, it's such a great book. And then also her generosity to the arts and to the country in what she gave to help fight war efforts and to help fight. She started up all these soup kitchens. Fantastic. She made the world's worst choice in men. This book is about that as well. I mean, you're kind of like, how can someone be so smart and then make these horrible choices? So that's a fun side to see. Nobody's perfect. We all have our crosses to bear. I have one of myself, but it's such a great story and such a great lady to revere.
I love that. And just so our listeners, when we post this podcast out and we share clips from the podcast, we will share these tidbits, books and people and learnings that other people can take advantage of. So Sherry, tell us what's in your mind here.
All of your points, so many amazing women in history and even of today. And mine might be a little unconventional as well, because it's a little different than most of yours. Right? Eleanor Roosevelt to me was somebody who was just so powerful, so ahead of her time. Granted, she came from, a family of wealth, So she didn't rise herself up from poverty. But what she did is she took her platform, she took her voice for civil rights, right? To get women, people of minority, just to have a voice for them and to carry that through in a time and a period where women weren't supposed to speak up. You weren't to have a seat at the table. And even, being cautioned that you may, cause your husband to lose a presidency or not be reelected, even the, party that they supported. So her willingness to get out there, her willingness, she was the first lady too to start press conferences. She had her own newsletter, right? She was not afraid. And I think that's the common theme that I heard. These women were brave. They were pioneers. They weren't afraid to speak up when others were telling them to not, because they believed so much in what they were doing and believed so much in the rights of everyone to have that equal right. And I admire her for that, to really pushing through. And she lived by that till the day she died and was an advocate for civil rights. So for me, Eleanor, she's up there with the other powerful women.
I love it.
I love it too. And, that's a great segue into this next topic, which is a tough one. I think, all of us, all people experience self-doubt. And today, we've named that something called imposter syndrome, right? And I think everyone in their life has a time where they feel like, gosh, have I earned where I am? Do I fit in where I am? And I know for myself, this has been a lifelong challenge for me. But if any of you on this panel would love to share any experiences you've had with imposter syndrome, self-doubt, I think our experiences and sharing them and telling our stories is a way to be vulnerable and to help others who might be experiencing this, who are listening, especially women in business, to say, gosh, that's me. And maybe we can offer some tips for how other women can overcome that. And Michaela, I want to start here with you. You've shared some things with us in the past, and I'd love to get your perspective on this.
I absolutely, because this topic really hits home for me. I struggle with imposter syndrome pretty often, and I will make no qualms about it. I told the other panel members today that as I'm sitting here, there's still this little voice in my head that says I'm not qualified to be here. So it does really help when you have people around you that remind you why you belong in the room. One of the things that I try to do when I feel those kinds of self-doubt things is you have to just acknowledge that feeling. And it's a first step for me in how I process things, because you have to recognize the feeling without letting it take over. And then you can work on reframing that negative self-talk into something that's more positive. Make a point of celebrating your achievements, surround yourself with people who'll celebrate with you. And, it's about focusing on facts over feelings. And the fact for me is that I have built a long career in this field and I do have a lot of experience. So when I feel like I don't belong, I have to remind myself that it's just the feeling and not the reality. And then when I can't shift my mindset on my own, I have to lean on my network, if it's my friends or my family or even therapy, to try and figure out why I'm feeling inferior, even if there's not a reason to. And, when all else fails, just fake it till you make it. You pretend to be confident, push through, and somewhere along the way, you'll start to feel the confidence you're projecting. It's a journey and it's not easy, but acknowledging the struggle and just finding strategies to work through, those are really helpful.
Those are amazing tips, Michaela. And I love this fact over feeling. I think just really trying to sit down and say, wait a minute, what am I doing? What have I done? Where am I sitting right now? And you, my dear, belong here with us on this panel 100%. And we're so glad you're here. Anyone else want to chime in, Laura or Sherry, on this topic?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Laura, not to jump ahead, but Michaela, a lot of what you said resonated, right? I've got some years on you. So I think, certainly with experience comes a little bit of wisdom, but I have yet to meet a woman that hasn't been challenged with the imposter syndrome, right? And I don't know if it's, upbringing, if it's just how women are. We're very emotional creatures, right? We tend to feel other people's emotions and so forth. But for me, even more challenging. I grew up in a military household. Chain of command was very important. My dad was a Marine. And I was also the only girl and the youngest in the family. So it was be seen and not heard, that kind of thing, respect your elders. So when I started into the professional work space, I tend to be the one that sat back, right, and listened and waited till I was asked a question. And initially, I feel that that held me back. It also made me insecure, right? That I wasn't having a voice. And it reminds me of a podcast or a TED talk that I heard from Sheryl Sandberg. And this is back in 2010, I think. She was a former COO of Facebook Meta, but really good advice. And that is, sit at the table. And I think as women, sometimes I even see it today where you come into a meeting room, and men may be sitting there or maybe somebody of power, and you tend to sit back or sit on the sideline. And the sit at the table reference isn't necessarily make sure you're front and center at the table. It's really to make sure you have a voice and that your opinion matters just as much as everyone else. And that imposter syndrome, kind of set in with me early on where it's, be seen and not heard, listen and watch what others do and then do as they do. And again, it took me a while to get out of that and realize that that was holding me back. And I loved what you said too, Michaela, about lean on your network when you don't have that confidence. Some people are born with it, and gosh, I envy those people, right? For me, I think my confidence had to be earned, and it was a lot of scars, a lot of heartache, a lot of tears, and a lot of triumphs too. There were moments where I really pushed myself. And another phrase that I learned very early on, and it came from my mom, and I love it to this day. I use it for a lot of my mentees when I talk with them is, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And once you realize that too, we all have fear of public speaking. We all worry, am I doing enough? Am I being seen? Am I being heard? How do I get to that next level? How do I get that respect? Right. And again, just be comfortable being uncomfortable, push yourself, and to what Michaela said, lean on that network.
Love it, Sherry. Thanks so much for sharing that. And, I think this vulnerability is good. That's a growing thing too. Being vulnerable and telling your story, helps you grow. In my opinion, I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Laura, did you want to chime in?
I do a little bit. So both Michaela and Sherry, great stories, great perspective. And I know someone in the audience is really going to benefit by those stories. I want to kind of talk about it two different ways. Sherry, you reminded me when you gave the advice from Cheryl Sawyer's about sit at the table. My first time I got at Wheels, the first time I got a leadership role and I was on the executive leadership team, you're given a seat at the table. And I was told by a former executive, no longer here, a woman, the only other woman that was on the board, by the way. And she looked at me and she put the seat right next to me. And she said to me, now just be quiet and listen. And I was like, at first I was like, oh, okay. All right, thanks. And I'm like, no. Everyone knows that I'm going to talk up. I'm going to speak. Everyone knows that. So they put me here for a reason. Yes. I need to trust that reason. I need to trust that they put me here for a reason and they don't want me to now be silent. So I'll be respectful, but I'm here for a reason. And I think that was some of the classic question, what was the worst advice you ever got? That would be it, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
She meant it from a good place, but that was a different generation, a different time. Mm-hmm. And I was following some pretty big footsteps in the role I was taking. I needed to start to chart my own path, that I wasn't going to be the person I was replacing. I am Laura Joswiak, and this is who I am. And if you like it, it's fantastic. Well, let's go. Let's reach for the heights. And if you don't, it is okay. Then that's not a place for me to be. And luckily, Wheels was that place for me to be, and I was able to keep on growing. But it's because of people that also gave good advice by saying, no, you can do this. We want you to do this.
Yes, I love it. Look at us now.
I'm so empowered right now.
Us now, right? I mean, all of us sharing that we've dealt with this time and time again and in different ways throughout our career, but here we are. And I think that's inspiring just in and of itself. And again, this is a great place to launch into some advice, right? So all of us have experienced different things and have had different career paths. So think about, the young women out there listening, and think about advice that you would give them for, considering a career in fleet, a professional career, and thinking about like, also, I love this. What would I tell my, younger self and my future self? So let's dig into that a little bit. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Perfect.
So many good questions in there.
Mhm.
I'll go with the younger. Well, I don't know, but I'll go with the younger self, because it'd be the same advice I would give my younger self as I would any person or any woman wanting to come into fleet. Is you're going to make mistakes, and that is okay. Find your people and ask them for help. But that, to me, it took me a long time to realize I didn't have to do everything myself. I just felt, again, think about how I started in fleet. I did have to do everything myself because there was nobody there in my department until we hired people and they take on, and then you help them take off, right? You help them grow, and to be able to do that, and you shift from being the person that is trying to get all the work done to the person that now you're advocating for other people to grow and put them on your shoulders to lift them up. And I think that would be my advice, is find those people, men or women, who are going to help support you and lift you up and not bring you down. Life is hard enough. If you're up against someone who wants to bring you down, change paths.
Well said. Well said.
My future self would say, there will be a day that you'll be able to go to the bathroom when you actually need to, and not just in between meetings.
That's great.
How many times are you like, can I take a bio break? So one day we're all going to be able to just have our bio break when our bodies needs us to, instead of when your meeting allows you to.
Yep. I love it.
It's simple.
Michaela, what do you have for us here?
I think the biggest piece of advice I could give is to get involved in professional organizations early on, join them, attend their events, take advantage of the networks they already have. And I wish I'd done both of those things sooner. And the connections that you make and the support you'll receive are just invaluable. Don't overlook their educational resources either, because they put those tools together for a reason, and they're being put together by people who've been in this industry for years and just want to share what they've learned. Fleet is so unique in how collaborative it is, and how people just genuinely want to help others succeed. They're not trying to outdo each other. They're just trying to lift each other up. And it's kind of amazing. And I think if I could give that advice to my younger self, or even to my future self, it would be to learn to lean into that collaboration and support more. And when you're starting out in any career, it can feel like an uphill battle, but you don't have to do it alone. And that's the one thing I really wish I knew earlier.
Love it. Great advice. Sherry, what do you have for us?
I mean, I echo exactly the same thing that Laura and Michaela just said too. The mistakes, not dwelling on them, I think is really important to be able to let it go. But one thing too, I was thinking as you both were talking, I mean, networks are extremely important. I certainly would tell my younger self, get involved, as my boss told me when I initially started in fleet. Best advice I ever got. But also to let things go, right? Don't hold on to it. There's a wonderful podcast, and I was just reintroduced to it. I heard it years ago, and somebody had it on LinkedIn, but it's a Simon Sinek podcast with Mel Robbins. I don't know if any of you know who Mel Robbins is.
Love both of them.
Let them. Yeah, the whole let them theory. And, that's something too for my future. I still need to remind myself of that. But my past, people are going to have opinions. You're going to feel like you've let people down. Let them feel what they feel, right? And let those things go. Don't carry it with you. I think for, especially my younger years, I carried a lot of that with me. Like, oh gosh, did I upset this person? Am I going to let somebody down if I have to say no to this? Whether it's family, or your work, right? You feel like you have so many things you need to do, and you're going to let somebody down because you can't do them all some days. And let them feel what they feel and let it go. I think that's really good advice. Past into my future, I need to carry as well.
That's amazing.
If
Love
I
that.
can add to that too, I was just talking to
Yeah.
somebody this morning about you will always have distractors,
Oh,
right? Always have distractors.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then you're not pushing yourself as hard as you should.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to have people that want to distract you or want to, whatever they want to do, or the negative part of life. And that's the let them theory that I think is most important. Like, that's okay. That's on them. It's not me. And listen, because maybe it is, and maybe you want to listen to it, but then also let it go and not own it.
Yeah, I think that let them. I love that too, Sherry. By the way, I love both of them. They're just so wonderful. But when I think about let them too, as a mom, even I will dwell on the things that I've done that I'm not proud of, and I'm thinking, you know what, my kids' reaction to those things, me talking about them, me having forgiving myself, all these. It's you got to let them do what they're going to do and be who they're going to be, and know that you're not responsible for that. You know, and taking on that responsibility is risky and definitely detrimental to your personal growth. For me, what I would tell my younger self and what I tell myself today and what I'm going to tell my future self, or if I could tell my future self, is self-care. Consistent self-care. Because we are only as good as, for others and for our jobs and our kids and our relationships, and we're only as good as we are to ourselves. So the better we are, the healthier we are mentally, physically, socially, emotionally, all those things. The healthier we are, we can be better, for ourselves and for those around us, and for our colleagues and our friends and for each other. And I just self-care is something that is not easy, and it has a lot of legs and facets. But I think just really, caring for your physical and mental and spiritual health is just critical as women, especially. And the more I learn from some of my favorite doctors, Dr. Mindy Pelz is someone who I've been listening to a lot, and she is, a guru on women's health, and she talks about, a lot about the things that we do, and it's not just what we eat or what we drink. It's just this overall more holistic view of how we treat our minds and bodies, is going to really help us or really hurt us. So especially in the long term, because we're always changing, right? So ladies, great advice, for everyone listening. Thank you so much for sharing that. And one thing I'd like to sort of wrap with is, we're here for a reason. We belong here. We are powerhouse women in fleet. So yay. And congratulations to us. I'd love to share some success stories. Think of something that has gone really well for you in your career, and your part in making that happen. I'd love to hear some success stories, because that is so encouraging for others to hear, is something that has gone really well for you. So, Michaela, kick us off here. Talk about something that's going or has gone well for you.
Oh boy. This is probably the only question I didn't write any notes for myself about, because
Okay.
I really hate trying to like talk about myself and those kinds of things. Um, I guess I'll talk about, how I came to Quilsus Corporate, and that wouldn't have really been possible without the fleet manager who was here at the time, who really pushed for me to make that jump from the local ABC team at 150 vehicles over to the corporate team with almost 2,500.
Yeah.
So she really spoke up for, what I was capable of, and really pushed for me to be able to be on that team. And I hope that since then, and she's since left the company, but I hope that since then that, I've made her proud in what I do, and that every day I just try to make things a little bit better in what we're doing, and trying to develop our program so that it continues to have that kind of longevity and everything into the future.
Love it. That's so great. But that's an
Yes,
example of someone who, was an advocate for you. And that's what it takes. We need to do that for each other. Sherry, jump in here.
Yeah, I mean, God, I feel the same way you do, Michaela. It's hard to, kind of talk about yourself or, really put that focus on yourself. But that's one thing too, that, a piece of advice for women, be proud of, where you've come and where you've gotten. And I think for me, where I sit today, that's what I'm most proud of. I feel like that's the success that I've worked these 27 years for. I love where I'm at professionally. I love where I'm at personally. I feel a balance. Some days that balance, it tips, but for me, success is being where I am today and working hard to get there, using my network, right? Believing in myself, stretching myself, putting myself in positions and saying yes to things that I knew nothing about, but you know what? I'm going to figure it out. And I've got this great network to help me. So for me, I guess, where I'm at today is kind of the success that I'm proud of. And I feel is what, helped me get to where I'm at. Ladies like you, the industry that we're in, right? So many opportunities out there, and just take them. Just take them.
Love it. I know I'm so proud of both of you and all of you. I love being able to work alongside of you. Laura, what would you like to share?
I'm going to go back in history because I think this is an interesting story because it changed Fleet too. So
Yes.
way back, I was working at MK at the time. Again, I've kind of been a lifelong learner, more ways than one. And I thought on the Fleet side, I wanted to relate more and understand more about what our clients were going through as fleet managers, like Michaela. I wasn't a fleet manager yet. I'm working with fleet managers, and I didn't feel that was very authentic of me, and I wanted to learn. So through NAFA, I saw they had a CAFM program. So I applied for the CAFM program, and then I was told that I can't apply to get the CAFM because affiliates weren't allowed to be full members of AFLA, and you had to be a full member of AFLA in order to be in the CAFM program. And I was like, she goes, yeah, but this is up for vote right now. And so I called all my fleet friends. I gathered my network and said, I'm not telling you how to vote, but I understand there's a vote. First of all, I want to make you aware that there's a vote to allow affiliates to become full members. And then the vote took place, and I was watching for the vote, and the vote passed, and now an affiliate can become a full member. So I became the first full member of AFLA from an affiliate.
Thank you, Laura.
And then, yes, you're welcome. That was, I was Laura Wallace at the time. And then as soon as I became and I got my membership, I applied for the CAFM, which I was the first affiliate to pass the CAFM as well. Now, it made with some noise in the fleet industry because although I just told you why I was doing that, because I didn't feel very genuine understanding the fleet manager's perspective, that's why I did it. It didn't meet the industry, 100% of the industry as such. And some fleet managers thought that I was now going to go and take their jobs and stuff. So I had to manage through that. Quite interesting articles way back in the day, Sherry. I don't know if you remember all of that. And so, yeah, I was called a cancer on the fleet. And because people, they didn't know my intentions, and that was a scary moment for people, apparently. So also an interesting learning. I felt really bad for MK because I'm like, sorry, I thought I was just doing this for me. Now there's a little bit of bad press, but it worked out well. And now it's commonplace. Of course, affiliates are full members. There's thousands of CAFMs. I promote it within Wheels that our staff should get CAFMs as well. So that is my, I was very proud to be that first and to break those barriers by the support of everybody else who actually voted for it to make it happen.
It always takes that one person, right? That one person to say, well, why not?
Yeah.
Why can't we do this, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Laura, because that is a huge shift for the industry.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that story about you. So that's fascinating.
Happened a long time ago, so I'm not surprised.
I love that.
When we meet in various parts of the world, we don't really talk about that.
No, so much to share. And you talk about learning a lot, Laura. I've learned a lot from you. You are an incredible teacher.
Same.
And Erin, you as well. Well.
Erin.
Even prior to your podcast, I have learned so much from you in this industry, and I definitely feel the love on this panel, but you ladies have, you're rock stars, and what you give back is tenfold to what you get. I can
Thank
guarantee
you,
that.
Sherry.
That
You do
is
the
a
same.
great lesson. Thank you, Sherry, for saying that. And likewise, all around, Laura, I love that story. And thank you personally. Thank you for breaking that barrier down quick and effectively. I love it. But I just, and I got emotional, all transparencies when we were preparing for this podcast. I got a little emotional because it is it's so wonderful to be with such an awesome group here today, but there's so many more of us
Yeah.
that we know and love in Fleet that are just women who give and who care for one another and mentor one another. So what I'd love to kind of leave, our listeners with here today is just this encouragement for women to consider the fleet industry as a space where you can grow your career, but you can grow friendships as well and be supported by other women industry professionals. And certainly our male friends in Fleet are incredibly supportive to us and have been mentors to us and us to them. Really just encouraging everyone who's listening today to reach out to any of us with any questions that you have. You can find us on LinkedIn. But I just want to give a very heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you for sharing your stories, your ideas, your advice with our listeners. And I'll close out my podcast in the usual way. Thank you all again. Thanks to our listeners who come back again and again and who send me awesome notes and just keeping this community going. But we always end Straight Talk on Fleet by saying, keep it real, keep it safe for Fleet's sake. And thank you, ladies, so much for being with us today. It was amazing.